Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Good
Morning, Rob.
morning.
Hey, good morning, Rob. This is Tyler. I just wanted to make sure you saw my message that I need to schedule a call with you at some point today.
Perfect.
Okay, thank
Um,
you.
you got it. All right. So, anyone want a little feel-good news?
We could
All
use it.
right. So here's some feel-good news. Because of all of your hard work, we were recognized by Real Trends. They consolidated our New Jersey and Florida operations, and we jumped to the number two fastest growing company in all of Real Trends. We are only one ahead of us is some small company that bought Anywhere called Compass. Outside of that transaction, we are the second fastest growing. So congratulations to all of you, because as you know, I haven't made one sale, so it's all your hard work.
That's amazing.
Please
Yeah.
send us. Please send us something we could post on social media.
Fred is working on that, so we will get something out there. But I just wanted you all to hear it from me, and the gratitude and the congratulations for all of you. What do we have? 37. I'll wait a couple minutes. Anybody have a good success story you want to share while I'm waiting for the slow Friday people to get on?
I got a little unique story. I was showing homes recently, and I saw a mail lady and didn't know who she was, but I went and I approached her and I said, "Listen," I said, "I'm sure there's people out on your route that are thinking of selling their home." I said, "Here's my business card. I'd appreciate it if you let me know if you catch any information from the neighborhood." And she gave me a lead. And I went, knocked on the door. Nobody was home. I'm following up on it, but just by chance, I tried something unusual, and
So,
it might have produced something.
So Bobby, you want to hear an interesting corollary to that? Is when I go door knocking with agents, I always ask the mail carrier if they own a house and if they have any interest. And we've had three purchasers in my probably 6 or 7 years of door knocking. Maybe I've been doing it longer, that have actually bought houses through your peers because they actually make pretty decent money. They're hardworking people, and it's a conversation worth having.
Well, in this case, she did right off the bat. She goes, I bought my first home last year. So unfortunately, that would have worked out, but I hear you loud and clear.
You're a year late there. When the substitute mail carrier comes, Bobby, you know what to do.
I have something I can add there, Ron. I
Okay.
a few years back, I had gotten in the state of Florida. I don't know if it's everywhere, but we have a car tag that expires after 12 months. And 3 or 4 years ago, I'd gotten, forgot about my car tag, had gotten a ticket. I mean, it was only, I think, $25 or something like that, so it wasn't a big deal, but it became somewhat of a fetish for me. So as I'm walking around, well, this has gone back years. I've probably put hundreds of my business card. I write on the back of my business card, your license tag has expired. And I just put good luck, Bob, or something at the bottom of it. And I've gotten one sale, but I've just be surprised about. I mean, at least maybe once a month, I'll get either an email or a text, or somebody will say, "Hey, thanks a lot for reminding me about my car tag being expired." So anyway, if it gets you one deal, I guess it was worth the effort. But it's kind of a fun thing I do.
Yep. All right. Well, you're building some positive PR there, Bob. Um, so I want to just mention something that just comes to mind, just kind of playing off that. You Building relationships is the former thought leader CEO, or I think it was the president of Real, Sharon. He had a saying where real estate is a business of relationships and power players. It's a business of relationships and power players. And when I say that, what I comes to mind is, there's several times when I've helped agents when they were, either away on vacation or not feeling well, to work with their offers and pending transactions. One of the best goodwill things I've gotten, Bob, was if there's multiple offers, I go out of my way to put in dot loop or to have them hand sign that they received it and they're declining it, and I'll send a picture of that e-signature to the agent that presented the buyer. I'll say, "Hey, Bob, thanks so much for your offer. just want you to know that I presented to my client and, she reviewed it and unfortunately we didn't take it, but thank you for the offer. And they know for sure that it was presented. Because did you ever have a feeling that your offer wasn't fairly presented or was perhaps never presented to the seller? Did you ever have that feeling? And I can't tell you the positive response I get from the agents that put the time to put the offer together. Even if the offer was written poorly, they acknowledge and they appreciate that. So that's building relationships. And if it happens to be one of the top 5 or 10%, like a power player, then you're building that reciprocity. So you're building that relationship with an influencer in the business. So anyway, that was just an interesting tip to piggyback off of Bob's. Your license tag has expired. I want to get on to today's topic, and today's topic is kind of a spinoff from my reread of the book by Gino Wickman called Traction. If anybody's ever read that, if not, it's a pretty good read. Or in today's environment, it's a good listen. I've managed to re-listen to the whole thing, Bob, on my trip from Broward up to Palm Beach, up to Gainesville and back. I listened to the whole book. So the 6 components to a consistent thriving business, and there's nothing here that's going to be, wow, I didn't know that. But if you kind of reinforce the way you do your daily habits, it'll be really important. The first one is vision, right? And, I was looking at it from, what's the vision of our organization? And I think everybody in our business has to have their own unique vision of what they want to accomplish, and the more granular and specific that you get, I think the more significance and the more it's anchored to the result. So, if you want to take the attachment there, I put it all there. Like, who are you serving? First step to the vision, right? And sometimes you say, hey, I serve anybody that calls me. Well, maybe we can refine that so that we attract what we're looking for. What's your long-term plan? What's your 1 year, 3 year, 10-year plan, if there's a 10-year plan for you? And Gino Wickman, who's the author, and does anybody know Floyd Wickman and Ed Escobar? So Bobby Golden does. All the Bobs know it.
Tom knows it too.
Okay, Tom knows it as well.
I went through Hog Hunters. We went through that sweat hog training. We're hog hunters.
Okay, so and Tom, where were you before you moved to Florida?
I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I was with Remax in Illinois. Before that, that's where I did the sweat hog training with Floyd Wickman. Great guy. Yeah.
Yep. And so this book was written by his son, and a lot of it is influenced by Floyd and Escobar and his observations of their success. One of the takeaways that Gino says is agents don't fail for a lack of talent. They more often fail for a lack of clarity. Okay, they don't fail for a lack of talent. They fail for a lack of clarity. And then the second component that Gino talked about is people and having the right team. And in real estate, this could be taken many different ways. It's not necessarily, hey, I have the Rob Lazar real estate team. What are some examples of people that can propel you in this business? How about me? I'm trying to help you.
Yes.
That's the first
and
one,
your
right?
mortgage company and your title company.
Your mortgage company, your title company. We regularly have a group of people that, are either direct or indirect mentors to us, right? Because we're all probably picking up 1 or 2 little nuggets every week we come here. And, most of these nuggets are picked up by your peers that are sharing their experience and their story. We have lenders, attorneys, inspectors.
It's relationships. It's the relationships you have.
Relationships, yeah.
I mean, having Dave with what he knows with the contracts is exceptional because it gives us so much insight having somebody sort of in the core or the thick of it. So absolutely.
I'm going to share a non-real estate related story, which I think can easily correlate to real estate. And this is a couple of years outside of college. I kind of got sloppy. I stopped going to the gym, was working a lot. And a buddy of mine moved one town over. And we both joined the same gym in between, and we'd go there the same time every day. And that was my accountability partner, because I knew if I didn't go there at 5:30, Scott would be there and he'd be like, "Where's Rob?" Right? And we did that 3 days a week, and that was probably the most consistent that I ever was in terms of going to the gym, working out, and focusing on my health. And I think there's a parallel in real estate where you can find an accountability partner. I know Joe Garcia in our Westfield office, before he does his prospecting, he's on the phone with a group of people that are holding him accountable and role playing. They role play before they get on the phone, so they get some momentum before they hit it. So does anybody have an accountability partner?
Mine's John Gooden.
Okay. So maybe if you don't, maybe you want to just pick one, because it benefits you both by creating the partnership, right? You both get something of value by, hey, did you make your calls? Hey, let's start calling now. And maybe after you do whatever prospecting or activity you're doing, you can just circle back and say, hey, today was mediocre for me. Nothing stuck. And your accountability partner might say it's the best day I had. 2 days later might be your best. And then lastly, virtual help, right? An admin, VA support. I know for our friends out in the Missouri market, we have a phenomenal transaction coordinator, right? Does anybody use our TC service? So over there, that's a leveraging by having somebody hopefully more consistent, taking on some of that responsibility for you, so that you can reallocate that time to things that are going to take you in that next step, that next direction. Your environment is stronger than your willpower. Build the right environment. Yes, Casey is amazing. So willpower doesn't take you there. Willpower eventually you run out of steam. Okay, you need to have structure, support systems, accountability partners, things like that, to statistically be more effective at achieving your goal. The third is data. How do we use data in our business? And no looking at my sheet. I want to see if maybe we'll pick up something outside of what I have here.
How about goals and growth?
Goals and you can measure yourself against where you were last year. You can measure your calls, things of that nature. What other data comes to mind?
Like the way the market responds to certain things happening within the season. That information is always essential.
And Sierra, what did we use yesterday to get some seller to get a little bit closer to where they needed to be?
Honestly, time. Spend time, spreadsheet.
And on the spreadsheet, we had a ton of data, right?
Yep.
And we influenced her client to probably price it 30,000 below where they wanted to, because we had the data and we asked some better questions. What else? What other ways do we use data? I mean, hopefully you have data in your CRM, right? You have clients and information that's there.
Rob, I always use data to manage my clients' expectations.
Okay. And how so?
Different ways, whether it's, the list to sale ratio, when the offer is lower, then I pull up this is the average and this is where the buyers are currently. If it's cash, it's probably higher. So having those data when I present an offer, it does help me get to an agreement.
It takes some of the emotion out of the conversation, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I prefer objective data than emotions.
Fantastic. And there's a couple other things that I want to see if I can harvest from the group here. What other ways do we use data? Let me ask you, is anybody here competitive? If you're competitive, raise your hand. So a use of data is, hey, you know what? We as an organization, we're number 2 fastest growing in Real Trends. Maybe I want to take our team to be number 1. right? Maybe you're a platinum agent, maybe you're a diamond agent, maybe you're number 10 in the state. Doesn't this data motivate us, right? And it's a healthy motivation. So using a scorecard, keeping track. Data can also help you. Many of you on this call, I've sat with you and I said, hey, where does most of your business come from? And one of the agents said, I think I get about 40 to 50% of mine from my prospecting. I do circle prospecting and I call expires and FSBOs. And when I exported or printed up their closings for the past year, it was only about 14% of their actual business was from the source that they thought it was. So if you don't analyze the data, sometimes you're just spitballing the numbers. Anybody spitball and you guesstimate what's going on? Well, you might be getting it wrong if you don't, eventually true up at some point. Another great data point is listing taken to listing appointments. So what's your closing rate? How about what's your sale rate? Here's something that I would encourage everybody to do is run your own data on your personal listings, list price to sale price and days on market, and then compare it to the overall market. Because many of you are better than you know, and you're just not sharing that information with the client. Because I know this group here overwhelmingly prices homes better than the rest of the competition, which means that our list to sale price is going to be higher. And don't you think that's some data that a client deserves to know? And, if Data sells her listings for 3.7% more than the competition, right? When you charge 6%, it's not a painful experience because you're showing that I sell for more, right? Does anybody track data like listing appointments to listings taken, days on market for your listings compared to the competition, contracts written to contracts accepted? Is that a good data point to look at? And if your contracts written to contracts accepted is lower, some of the agents I've talked to say it's my client's fault. My clients are unreasonable. If you're doing a reasonable volume of business, the law of averages will play out. And guess what? You own your outcome, right? If somebody's getting 70, 80% of their offers accepted, somebody else is getting 20, do you think it's luck or do you think it's something that they're doing differently? Cindy Reddy, is that luck or is that process? Is that, you're still muted?
Okay, it's definitely not luck. It's the situation and we have to own our outcomes.
And Cindy, do you think that, agents, often blame the client?
Absolutely.
And, it's a hard pill to swallow. But I will tell you that, I've seen agents that work really hard, extremely honest. They feel like they're doing all the right things. And they say, my client did this, my client doesn't understand. It's what you're doing. It's the communication strategy that you have. It's not the client's fault. And this is the fairest business in the planet because it doesn't discriminate. If you're able to make a sale, you get paid. Okay. If you can't complete the transaction and you show them 10 houses and you're complaining that you didn't get paid, how do you think the client feels? Do you think they feel good that they've taken your time and made 10 offers and got nothing accepted? No. So you get paid exactly what you're worth in this business, and the data will show it. Data removes emotion. When you measure the right things, you focus on and fix the right things, okay? And if you're a team leader, another data point would be, let's do some comparisons and contrasts with your team members. And it's not playing favorites. It's like, I want to share with you who's doing what. And tell me, team member one, what are you doing that's helping you to reach this threshold, right? And when they share it with the group, it's reinforcing what they're doing to become successful and actually making them better. This leads us into the next point, which is problem solving. Does anybody have problems in real estate? Does anybody wish that that there were less problems? Stop shaking your head, Sam, because if there were less problems, you wouldn't be needed. I mean,
They're
that's
not
the
problems,
hardest.
they're opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
Problems are opportunities in disguise, right, Tom?
Yep.
And it's interesting to see, how a experienced veteran agent deals with a problem versus maybe a newer agent or maybe even a long-term licensee who doesn't do a lot of volume. Do you ever see somebody panic when something happens? Now, let me ask you, Tom, if you panic, what do you think your client's going to do?
Follow the leader.
They're going to panic, right?
Yep.
And people can tell by the tone in your voice, by the confidence that you exude, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you wouldn't want a surgeon, panicking before they do surgery, would you?
Trust me. No, you wouldn't.
Would not. You wouldn't want a lawyer panicking before they go to court, would you?
No.
So you don't want to have an agent that panics in the process.
Mm-mm.
Because there's things that happen on a regular basis that we need to get through. And if these things didn't happen, then to be quite honest, we wouldn't be necessary, right? Some problems that we have, and I was thinking about this when I was putting this together, right? I'm like, everybody wants to grow their business, right? However, the past few years and probably the next few years, that we have a finite number of sales that are going to happen, and it's primarily driven by the people who are making decisions to sell their house. And if there's a finite number of sales available and everybody wants to grow their business, then the people who are growing their business need to stake claim to an unfair share of the business, right? Because when we grow, it's not like we're creating demand. We're taking opportunity from somebody else. In order to take something from somebody else, you can do it by price or service, right? And I think, trying to become a discounted individual, it's always a slippery slope. Investing in yourself and providing quality will get you more repeat business than discounting. Because if somebody discounts, if I'm a competitor and somebody's discounting, it's very easy to get into that space. You just need to cut your price a little bit, and then you're the low cost leader to enter that market. It's like if you ever saw the movie Something About Mary, there's a scene where he's like, 7-minute abs, and the guy goes, well, what if you do 6-minute abs? Like, that's crazy. You can't do 6-minute abs. And I remember that because, like, if you're defining yourself by a price, right, then you can get undercut by somebody who goes one digit below you. Sam, you had a question?
Yeah, I apologize. So that's a really good point, and it's making me think, and I wanted to ask for clarification. It sounds like then what my I guess number one priority should be is more solidify my pre-existing relationships and work extra hard on bringing in new business, so that when those people are ready, the time would have passed, and then now I don't know, have a lot of sales or something. So am I looking at that right, or is there a better direction I should be focusing? Thank you.
So I think I'm going to paraphrase your question, which is instead of trying to market to 100 people, you're going to take the 8 people that trust you the most and go deeper on those relationships and determine higher value. I think that's always the smarter way to go. It's a good observation. Some of the problems that we have, low inventory, I don't think any of us can really solve that problem. Pricing objections, I don't know if it was Tom who said that these are gifts. The objections that we get are actually gifts to differentiate ourselves. Financing issues kind of goes back to the team we surround ourselves with. Inspection surprises. There's really very few inspection surprises. I think it's more about setting the expectation on what likely and what may come up. And when I was in Gainesville, one of the agents sat with us and said that some of these mold inspectors will intimidate people and say that there's a little bit of mold here, right? And somebody's like, I'm not going to move because there's mold. But our very insightful agent said, have you tested the house that you live in now? And the answer almost always is no. and there's probably mold spores in the house that you live in now, and you're looking for perfection where you're going, and you just need to have the right expectation. And I find it's always easier if you have expectations set before the problem arises. Set expectations before a potential problem arises. Because if you've been in the business and you've had a handful of listings and you haven't set the right expectation, when somebody's house goes under contract in the first weekend, is it possible that somebody can call you up and say, Cindy, I told you like we were underpriced it, it sold right away. I think we gave money away. But if you set the right expectation, you show them how the market works, then that person's going to realize that you did a masterful job. And Sierra and I were on a Zoom for about 40 minutes last night with a client. And Sierra, do you remember what was the tipping point for getting maximum value in terms of days on market in the area we looked at in Nocatee?
Just focusing on, the group of homes that have went under contract within 13 days, rather than anything above that, losing $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in some cases worse, much more.
Yeah, I think it was 13 or 14 days, and there were some that went in 3 days, and there were some that went in like 10 to 13 or 14 days. Then after that, it went all the way to 35 days. And all the ones that took 35 days were a solid 5% less. And then the ones that went beyond 90 days were going in the 15% discount range. Now, your client that you had last night was uber analytical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was biased to overprice that pretty badly. And on a 770, overpricing it by 30 or 40,000, could be catastrophic. And I think you handled it really well and get the price to be right around market. Maybe it was a little optimistic look at market, but it certainly wasn't unattainable. And 35 minutes for a $30,000 price correction, I think, was worth it.
Yeah, and that was one thing also, is just really spending the time with people to help them understand, especially with someone that is very analytical, just really not saying, okay, well, I'll look into it and try to jam out of there or what have you. It's just slowing down your process and going through each and every listing or every active or every sold recently that's comparable, and explaining why and what makes theirs different.
Yep. So the takeaway is the agent who solves the most problems earns the most trust and subsequently earns the most money. The agent who solves the most problems earns the most trust and the most money. Now, I want to be careful in that read. You don't want to be one of these agents that make problems from nothing to solve them and try to be a hero. Anybody ever seen those folks? It's kind of like the fireman that starts a fire to go put it out. You don't want to create problems to solve them to make yourself look like a hero, but you do want to be well equipped to have the communication skills and the expertise to solve the problems efficiently. Systems for consistency, and I call this the growth multiplier. And I'm going to go back to the gym analogy. Does anybody go to the gym 3 times a week? Somebody must.
Yes, I go 3 to 4, sometimes 5.
Okay. And how long do you go when you go to each visit, Lisa?
1 hour.
So 1 hour. Now let me ask you a question, Lisa. If you have a really busy week, could you skip going to the gym until Saturday and then do 5 hours on Saturday and have the same result?
No, absolutely not. No, it's my non-negotiable. I'm go every morning before I start my day.
Right, but you can't like do it all in one day by deferring it.
No, because then you'd be too sore. You wouldn't be walking on Sunday.
Right. So this is the same principle. Consistency beats intensity. So you don't want to wait until Friday or Saturday and do 5 hours. You need to do it consistently, because you won't execute, because that task of the thought of going to the gym for 5 hours would probably cause you not to even do the hour that you normally do because you'd be overwhelmed. And the same is true for our business. Okay. Consistency beats intensity. And then systems, schedules create that consistency, right? And this goes back to, Elon Musk, I read one of his, transcript from one of his interviews. He said, I always wear the same clothes because I don't have to think. I just get up, I put the same shirt and the same attire on because I save a minute every day from thinking about what I'm going to wear. And with the genius that he has, 365 minutes a year, he might be able to get to Mars 6 months sooner.
Yes, hi. Could I have a medium hot latte, please?
Bobby Golden, look at that, Bobby.
Tell him I want a latte too. Get it over here.
So systems create consistency, and many of us have the opportunity, even if you put yourself as like a role model, like a Bobby who's a leader in his office. By being a role model, it makes you more consistent. Having strong systems, lead generation, follow-up, listing, buyer and seller onboarding systems, marketing systems. A lot of these things kind of tie in together, but systems turn chaos into predictability and predictability into scalability. Okay. This industry in 2026 is seeing the top performers doing more business than they've ever done, even in a flat to down market. I mean, we see some of these teams and agents doing massive, massive numbers. It's not because they're more intense. It's not because they're smarter. And they certainly don't have any more time than we do because they have systems. They have systems that provide results. And the last one is execution, the only one thing that actually produces results. So you can think about, you can build systems, but if you don't operate them, nothing materializes. Execution is where agents separate themselves. Execution means doing the work daily, honoring commitments, following the plan, adjusting quickly. And to adjust quickly, you need to have the data to know what you're adjusting to, right? Ideas don't build businesses, execution builds businesses. Does anybody have a coach that you pay for?
I do.
Who do you coach with, Bobby?
Brian Buffini.
And how often do you do that?
I take a phone call every other week.
And what's the structure? Is the structure of that call different every week, or is it somewhat similar?
It's bear with me 1 second. Sorry. I would say it's similar. My coach Sedalia wants to hear from me to find out what happened in the prior 2 weeks, and then she has helpful suggestions. She gives me different feedback to where I can tweak, improve what I'm doing.
So finding out what you did is a form of accountability, correct?
Correct.
And do you think about that call, and if you haven't done anything, kind of having to come clean and say I didn't do anything this week?
Absolutely.
So knowing that there's an accountability call changes the behavior leading up to the accountability call, correct?
Correct.
And what else? What other things do you discuss with the coach on a call?
It's my experiences on Popeyes, prioritizing my lead, my database, and just general things that influence the daily activities.
So would it be fair to say when your coach is asking you those items that they're trying to figure out, which items are more effective to try to guide you in the path of focusing on what's more effective?
Yes.
Right. So that's evaluating the data and using the data to change the behavior between now and the next call, right?
Correct.
Bobby, how long have you been, many on the call don't know you yet. How long have you been in the business and how many transactions do you do, just so people have context?
I'm in the business right now 37 years, and I do somewhere between 25 to 35 deals a year.
And you still hire a coach?
I needed it for a lot of reasons, but yes.
And how long have you been using the coach?
Would be a little over a year.
Okay. Is that the first time you've ever used a coach or no?
Yes.
Okay. And just for context, I think you're probably number one, or if not number one, you're probably top 3 in Woodbridge Township, right? For agents?
I'm gonna full disclosure. That used to be the case. This year's a tough year for me, so I can't say that I'm gonna end up where I'm used to being. But yes, I'm a top producer in Woodbridge Township and also Middlesex County.
Fantastic. So for those of you, who say maybe I only need a coach when I'm newer in the business, probably a misnomer, right? I mean, the best professional athletes, they don't get to the professional level and then say, oh, I don't need a coach, right? They're probably having multiple coaches, right? And I know my business coach has a coach. I know Tom Ferry talks often about his multiple coaches that coach him. And, if you don't have a coach or a mentor, maybe focus on having a mentor so you can compare notes and elevate yourself instead of doing it the hard way. Does anybody have like a written 3-year plan? I'm going to start low. I know most of us do a 1 year. Does anybody have a written 3-year plan?
Rob, mine's a 5-year plan.
You have a 5-year plan. And can you kind of correlate, like what's the connection between like the simple 1-year plan and the 5-year plan in your world?
Well, the 5-year plan, it's kind of like doing strategic planning at local and state associations. I created it 3 years ago. And so you evaluate it, every October as I redo business planning each year to see what needs to be changed. Did we meet our growth levels? Where do we need to make incremental changes? For me this year, I'm getting licensed in another state and looking at, what's our profitability? Are there, where are our opportunity zones? And always, where is the market changing? I'm the weirdo that likes changing markets because I like to pivot, and most people use as an excuse to, have a bad year. And I'm like, all right, great. Now what do we do? Where do we pounce? So, yeah, it's just basically future casting your business. I think we all do it. We just may not have it written down.
And I think, both committing it to writing, Kim, and actually looking at it will have a compound effect on your ability to execute.
Oh yeah, my first strat plan, I was so proud of myself, and I never looked at it again. So that was 20 years ago. But I look at it about once a quarter just to see how we're doing in comparison. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of things at the moment. How we're doing in comparison with where we thought we'd be and where are we off, and how do we make adjustments now so that we'll be okay moving into the fall at this point.
So if any of you do audiobooks or enjoy reading in some of your downtime, I would recommend the book Traction, because we really are all entrepreneurs. And one of the other things that Gino talks about is having the big rocks. And for him, the big rocks are 90-day goals. And 90-day goals are things that are significant enough to to be something that you can accomplish in 3 days, but short enough so that you don't procrastinate it to a 5-year goal. And then you review the rocks, and then after your 90 days, you can set new goals so that you can continually refine your business. So in our business, the way I'm thinking about it is a 90-day goal could be, I'm going to do 2 open houses a month. I'm going to door knock and get 4 new pieces of business in 90 days. A goal could be, I'm going to do a personalized, well-written email on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. every Tuesday. And I'm going to send 2 of them out, 1 to my segment in Parkland and 1 to everybody else, right? And when you do it consistently, you'll find that maybe the open rate's only 50%. But some people will be like, hey, what happened to my Tuesday email? I hope Sierra's okay. I didn't get it this week because it's so consistent. And I think that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that if we didn't send an email out, probably half of you would come on at 11 o'clock on Friday just because there's an expectation. So if we build in these, sprints, I'll call them 90-day goals, and then we continually reevaluate them, I think at the end of 12 months, that's going to, build upon itself and help us get there a little bit quicker, a little more consistently. And it will also give us that sense of accomplishment of checking something off that list. Who has a big rock that they want to achieve. Maybe it's converting a for sale by owner. Maybe it's, getting 2 expireds to list with us. Anybody have any of those? Maybe it's, effectively getting out of the transaction management business. For those of you not in Missouri, does anybody else use a transaction coordinator? Sarah, you use one? Who does that for you? You're on mute, unless maybe she's talking outside.
No, I'm good. So we had used one pretty regularly, and so we're actually looking to build that in-house now, because it helps free up a lot of time, and it's worth every penny to have that person doing that for us.
How much time do you think a TC saves on a transaction?
Oh goodness. Probably 20 hours.
That's a aggressive savings. But I don't know. I think probably for most of us. Well, how many hours do you think you spend on TC work? Just a couple other people, and then I'm going to come back to you, Sam. Lisa, how many hours do you spend on a transaction, or Bobby with the paperwork?
Way too much.
Is it 8 hours, more or less?
And I'm sorry, Rob, daily or weekly?
No, on the entire transaction. So if you
yeah, 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours is probably spot on.
And Bobby, what's your hourly earnings?
You're catching me again. Because today, Rob, I don't know. I'm not going to lie to you. I calculated out after you asked me this a little while back. Today, I don't know.
It's significantly more than you'd pay a TC, correct?
Yes.
So I know that you have a little bit of help on yours, but if you were doing it all yourself and you didn't know those numbers, you might say, "Hey, I'm saving $500 or $800 a file by doing it myself." But in reality, if your time is worth $600 an hour and you're doing $40 an hour work, you're losing $540 every hour you're doing that. And these are things that I want business owners to think about, where salespeople don't necessarily think about it that way. Okay, Sam, you had a question? I want to come back to you now.
I was gonna follow up on your 3-year, 5-year plan thing and mention Sandy developed a really amazing spreadsheet that shows everything from your personal rent to your taxes to your livelihood and your goals and expectations. So you know how many homes you have to sell that year to hit what you want, what you're dreaming of having. And I think that's a great motivator, because when you see those numbers on a spreadsheet, like you have to work X hard. And I always like to shoot 20 or 30% above that, so that if I don't deliver, I land where I want to land at. So it's something wonderful, and I wish everybody could have access to that, because it's such an amazing tool. So I wanted to piggyback on that.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Hey, Rob.
Go ahead, Bobby.
I'm going to throw myself on the mercy of the group here. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat. And if anybody can email me to explain to me how they pay their assistants, that would be helpful. In a perfect world for me, I'd like to pay them on a transaction basis, a percentage, part-time, something like that. But I'm gonna put my email in there, and if anybody can give me any feedback at all, hopefully that will give me a little direction.
I know that there's some teams, I don't know if any of them are on this call, but some team leaders, Bobby, will go out on a listing, for example, and bring a team member, say, "Hey, I have Andrew here with me. Andrew's my team member." When they leave the listing appointment, Andrew does everything, and Andrew might get 20%. Does anybody do something similar to that? So literally all the paperwork afterwards goes to a team member. I'm going to mute everybody because I hear background noise. So anybody have any other questions?
I just sent you. Oh, go ahead.
No, go you first.
Oh, I was just saying that I put in the chat some screenshots that everyone might find interesting if you want to take a look.
I'll just throw in, we talked about the transaction coordinators, and whether you knew or not, back for the longest time, I owned Citroen franchises, and during the 90s, we actually implemented a company-wide transaction broker, a transaction policy where every deal went to, I think we had 3 coordinators And as a broker owner, a bunch of things happened. Number one, I found out we didn't miss a lot of second deposits, which, that's a no-no whenever people they do a first deposit and then, a second deposit somehow never gets followed up on. And secondly, our dead deal files came down from what was averaging 15 to 16%, came down to 8% for fall throughs. And again, we had that going for probably 5, 6, 7 years. But again, it was if you did a deal with Century 21, it went to the processor. The sales agent could do some follow up if they wanted, but 90% of the work was done with a coordinator, and that was their responsibility to make sure all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. So, I mean, obviously, I'm just a single operator right now, and I kind of do my own processing. I did have a full-time assistant a few years back, but I think for anyone out there that has a team, I think the best thing you could do for yourself would be to have someone that is just in charge. And I'm sure maybe that's what you already do at this point, I would assume. But far, far better off, far easily worth whatever amount that you're going to pay those guys to get those deals closed.
Thank you for sharing. So Sarah's quoting the famous Harvard study. I think I just lost the screenshot. Can everybody see that? In a Harvard study, 84% had no goals, 13% had goals but not committed to paper, 3% had written goals and plans to accomplish them. I think many of us had heard this story. They say the 3% who had written goals on average did 10 times as much as the other 97 put together.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing. Even if it's only half of that, it's still like astronomical what having a written goal and actually looking at it and committing to it will do. So thank you for sharing that. Has anybody heard that one before besides Sierra? It's a pretty well shared fact, and worthwhile to commit that. I think somebody asked a question about, I don't know who asked the question about the door knocking in there. Let me look.
I think that was Albert. It was back at the very top.
Okay. Express system for door. So, door knocking is not sexy. It's not sophisticated. It's about conversations and relationships, right? And I think right now we have a unique opportunity in the business because I think people use their phone more for texting than talking now. Does anybody agree with that? And that means that there's an art which is lost of communication and conversation. Okay. People want to hide behind stuff. We need to be out there having conversations with people because that's what builds relationships, right? Did anybody ever get a automated text or get a lot of those? You don't even know if a text is real, but a conversation, an authentic conversation it's a art. Okay. And, door knocking, is a way to demonstrate your ability to create communication with complete strangers. And it's also a great example to show that, if the 52 people that are still here on this call all knocked on the same door, there'd be 52 different outcomes. And if you don't think so, I'm telling you, it's the truth. It's the way that you connect. It's the way you make eye contact. It's the tonality. It's the belief. It's everything. Right? Bobby, you door knock, right?
Yes, I enjoy it. I'm better at face-to-face knocking on doors than I am on the phone.
That's because there's more modalities. There's body language, right? Your body language, and you can read their body language, correct?
Correct.
So, I assume if you do door knocking, you've had successes. And I'm going to suggest, Bobby, that if another agent knocked on that same door, they probably would not have had the same outcome, right? Because it's the confidence, it's the strategy, it's the tonality, it's the body language that determines the outcome, not the random door that you hit.
And the first door is always the toughest. But once I get to the second or third door, I'm very relaxed, very confident. It's like anything else, it's the first step that's the hardest. And even when I go out with some of my agents in the office, they always want me to walk up the stairs, knock on the door, make the initial conversation because they're not feeling confident. But eventually I say to them, all right, your turn, go ahead, give it a shot. And kind of basically push them up the stairs, make them do it.
Yeah, and there's a saying, whether you believe it will or you believe it won't, you're right. And I think that's probably a really appropriate paradigm for all engagement. And door knocking is probably the pinnacle because you have the personal relationship, right? You get to look eye to eye, you get to speak tonality, and a really close second, if not a parallel, Bobby, is people walking into an open house, right? And this will be my last comment before I wish you all a great weekend. But if I was talking to a team leader that invests money on Zillow, and they're paying about $700 per phone call, and if you listen to some of those phone calls, those people don't even want to talk to you, right? And you're paying $700 for that call. So what I take away from that is when somebody walks into an open house and you can have a meaningful conversation with them, that's like $700 every time you do that or more. Okay. And if you're a master, if you're one of the best in Zillow, you're probably about a 12% conversion rate, 12%, paying multiple hundreds of dollars just to hear somebody's voice who might say, oh, I wanted to talk to the listing agent, or no, I'm not ready now. If you were to speak to 10 people in an open house, how many of them can you convert to being a client? You know, Bob from Gainesville, if you had 10 people you spoke to, how many of those people would wind up being your client?
The ratio is kind of low. I would say 1.5 to 2, basically. I mean, there's not a lot. I find over the last course, I don't do an open house every weekend, but I probably do at least 2 to 3 a month. And I don't know. I haven't had quite the participation as what I did, years back and all. So I might only get 4 or 5 people at a time. Perhaps maybe it's the location, maybe it's the amount of advertising I've done. I'm not so sure, but lately it seems as though I find more tire kickers, waiting for some reason. We use our best objection handlers to create a reason to purchase sooner, but in some cases you just can't get them above that.
So interestingly enough, 1.5 to 2 that's 15 to 20%. That's significantly higher than the best of the best convert on Zillow. So congratulations. Sure. And what's the average commission for a transaction for you?
Well, our average is probably about 325 to 350 in the area. I mean, obviously there's higher and there's lower, but my business is probably about a 325.
So if you did 4 open houses in a month, you probably have at least one client, correct?
Yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah.
And that client at 325 is probably a $7,000 commission.
Easy, yes.
Okay, maybe it's 7 to 10. So you're making $2,000 every time you do an open house. It's just not every open house you don't make 2. It's the third one you make 8. So
consistency is what you said, right?
Yeah, but it sounded like, when you said that, Bob, that you were disappointed that was like only 1.5 or 2, right? And I'm like looking at it and saying that if I run the numbers out, that it's a pretty good result. And it reminds me of probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, when Everydoor Direct Mail came out. One of our agents started using Everydoor Direct Mail. They put a QR code, what's your home worth, right? And they put a big phone number. And they sent out 2,000. I want to say it cost them $800 or $900. And they're like, Rob, this doesn't really work. I'm like, why? He's like, well, I only got 3 phone calls in one listing. I'm like, what was the listing? 650,000. I'm like, you got a listing of 650,000 for $800 and you're complaining? But it's a matter of perspective.
Right.
Because he sent out, I don't know, 2,000, right? And to only have 3 calls, I don't know, maybe the expectation was different. But there was 1 listing out of 3 calls from 8,000 mailers. Incredibly low response rate, but incredibly effective advertising. And sadly enough, the agent didn't realize the value, right? They were like, oh, I sent out 2,000. Maybe I'll get 200 calls. They had a different expectation. So please, let's focus on our numbers, and humble congratulations to all of you for helping RE/MAX Select Group hit a milestone. And those of you in St. Louis, your numbers aren't even included in that. So let's look forward to next year, right? Have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great weekend.